Today we will see about Georgian poets, so let's try to understand. Georgian poets were a collective of British poets active during the reign of King George V, approximately from 1910 to 1936. Their work was anthologized in 5 volumes titled Georgian Poetry, published between 1911 and 1922. They aimed to restore simplicity, naturalness, and accessibility in poetry, often avoiding archaic diction and choosing neat, melodious forms. Their poetry is characterized by formal techniques, traditional meters and rhyme schemes, romantic ideals, and sentimentality, frequently drawing inspiration from nature and rural life. The movement was positioned between the Victorian era's classicism and the emerging modernist movement's radical experimentation. While Georgian poets sought to make poetry more accessible and often embraced romantic and lyrical themes, their work has sometimes been critiqued as conventional or sentimental by later standards. Poetry movement, while initially progressive in making poetry more accessible, eventually receded as modernism gained prominence, particularly after the devastation of World War I. The term Georgian later acquired a somewhat pejorative tone, implying conservative or middlebrow verse, although the movement itself represented an important transitional phase in early 20th century British poetry. Themes of Georgian poetry include nature and the rural landscape. Georgian poets had a deep reverence for nature, often depicting its beauty and serenity. Nature was seen not only as a subject but also as a means of communication and reflection of emotional reality. Romanticism, the poetry echoed romantic ideals, emphasizing emotion, individual experience, and a connection to the natural world. It often embraced themes such as love, innocence, and the beauty of life. Sentimentality and simplicity. The poetry tends to have a sentimental tone, with straightforward, clear language and simple rhyme schemes to make poetry accessible to a broader audience. Reaction to modernity and industrialization. Georgian poetry sought to escape or critique the complexities and dislocations of the modern, industrial world, sometimes portraying urban life negatively and emphasizing a nostalgic return to pastoral settings. Emotional response and personal concerns. While some critics accused Georgian poetry of escapism, the poets aimed to express subjective, personal reactions to life and society, including acknowledging hardships and social realities such as poverty and illness. Moral and national identity. The poetry often reflected the conservatism of the early 20th century, addressing patriotic and moral themes, with an emphasis on national virtues and responsibilities. Rejection of aestheticism. Georgian poets rejected the Victorian aesthetic ideal of art for art's sake, and the more experimental modernism that followed, favoring traditional forms and romantic content. These themes, combined with formal poetic techniques and a nostalgic, idealized view of the English countryside and simpler life, mark the distinctive character of Georgian poetry. Let's see some of the poets. G. K. Chesterton (1874–1936) was a significant literary figure in early 20th century England, known primarily as a poet, novelist, essayist, and Christian apologist. Though not a core member of the Georgian poets, he was contemporary to them and part of the broader literary scene of that era. Chesterton was known for his sharp wit, paradoxical style, and lively debates with other intellectuals including George Bernard Shaw. His poetry often took the form of ballads with a strong social and political commentary, combining humor with serious themes. Chesterton's works were marked by his commitment to addressing political and social questions of the day through an accessible and engaging style. His poem, Lepanto, 1911 exemplifies his mastery of the ballad form, and his writings frequently blended comic elements with didactic and partisan themes. He was part of a circle of writers who reacted against the excesses of modernism and Victorian classicism, often sharing a more traditional and moralistic worldview. While Chesterton himself was not strictly aligned with the Georgian poets, his presence and ideas influenced the broader poetic and literary culture around them, contributing to the liberal and socially aware atmosphere that some Georgian poets also reflected in their work. Robert Graves, 1895–1985, was a renowned English poet, novelist, critic, and classical scholar, associated with the Georgian poetry movement early in his career. Born in Wimbledon, London, Graves came from a cultured family. His father was a Gaelic scholar and poet. Graves began writing poetry as a student at Charterhouse School and continued during his service as a British officer in World War I. Graves' early poetry, published during the war years, 1916–1917, reflects the natural beauty and bucolic themes typical of Georgian poetry, but also the harsh realities of war, as he was severely wounded and deeply affected by his experiences. After the war, his work took on a more personal and complex tone, influenced by his war trauma and troubled personal life. Beyond poetry, Graves gained fame for his historical novels such as I, Claudius, and his World War I memoir, Goodbye to All That. He also conducted extensive studies in mythology, producing influential works like The White Goddess, which explores poetic myth and inspiration. Graves remained a traditionalist in poetic form but was recognized for the emotional depth and lyrical beauty of his work. He served as Oxford's Professor of Poetry and received the Queen's Gold Medal for Poetry. His contribution to literature is significant for blending the formal Georgian style with modern themes of war, love, and mythology. Hilaire Belloc (1870–1953) was a prolific Anglo-French writer, historian, poet, and political figure known for his versatility and influence in early 20th century English literature. Born in La Celle-Saint-Cloud, France, to a French father and English mother, Belloc grew up in England and became a British citizen in 1902. He was educated at the Oratory School in Birmingham and then at Balliol College, Oxford, where he graduated with first-class honours in history. Belloc was known for his light, humorous verse, particularly for children, such as in Cautionary Tales, and for his satirical and historical writings. His poetry often reflected his strong Catholic faith, lively historical sense, and social and political concerns. He also had a career in politics, serving as a Member of Parliament from 1906 to 1910. Belloc's works include historical biographies, essays, travelogues like The Path to Rome, and satirical novels often illustrated by his friend G.K. Chesterton. His literary style combined wit with a strong moral and religious conviction, making his prose and poetry accessible and engaging. Belloc is remembered for blending a medieval outlook with contemporary political commentary and is regarded as one of the most versatile and influential English writers of his time. Edmund Blunden (1896–1974) was an English poet, author, and critic often associated with the Georgian Poets, though his connection was somewhat tenuous and he appeared in only one of the official Georgian poetry anthologies. Blunden is particularly noted for his evocative descriptions of the rural English landscape and for his poignant reflections on the experiences of World War I. He served as a lieutenant in the Royal Sussex Regiment during the war, where he was wounded and awarded the Military Cross for bravery. His wartime experiences deeply influenced his poetry and prose, with his memoir, Undertones of War, considered one of the most moving literary accounts of World War I. Beyond poetry, Blunden was a dedicated scholar and teacher of English literature, working at Oxford, Tokyo University, and Hong Kong University, and was known for championing lesser-known poets like John Clare. He published numerous volumes of poetry, biographies, and literary criticism throughout his career and was recognized with honors such as the Queen's Gold Medal for Poetry and the title Commander of the Order of the British Empire. Edmund Blunden's work reflects a blend of traditional pastoral themes with the harsh realities of war, making him a significant literary figure in early 20th century English literature. Please like, comment, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.